So welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for going through the maze to find this place as well. I know it's a little difficult to get here, but I think it's going to be worth your while. My name's John Paige. I'm professor of clinical surgery at LSU Health in New Orleans, and I'm one of the moderators for this and co-moderator.
Hi, I'm Marissa Begay. I'm a private practice surgeon in LA, solo practice surgeon for the past 15 years. So we have completely two different perspectives here, and I hope that'll help everyone in the audience.
And this is, we call this Dirty Little Secrets. Hopefully this is going to be give you guys some pointers that I can tell you when I went out, finished up with residency and fellowship, did not get. This was the whole purpose of this, to give you kind of some pointers on finance, advancement, branding, to help you along your career. But before that, we're going to start out with some opening questions. Everybody has their phone. Get on your app, the Sages app, and then at the bottom, you go to our session. And at the bottom, towards the bottom, there are these links. You see these links? And one says Audience Response System. Does everybody see that? Raise your hand if you're there. So everybody got it? Good, good. Okay, so we're going to do they're already doing it. This is the icebreaker. Where do you guys want to go on vacation next? Oh, wow. Yeah.
Wherever my wife wants. Smart man.
So Hawaii is definitely the winner here. Greece is, Japan has become. Wow. Bali, that's great. All right. It keeps on growing. Excellent. So Japan has one out. It's very interesting. Cleveland. I like that. So someone's already on vacation. Here comes Italy. Okay, well, that's the icebreaker. Thanks. Italy, Hawaii, and Japan seem to be the big ones. Space. And then the next question is, what do you want to learn today? You came to this session. What is the thing you want to get the most information about? Money. Make money. Management. Who put the money thing on? Perfect. Advancing career, practice, money, management. Awesome.
Sounds like you're in the right spot.
Perfect. Well, this is perfect. We're doing we're going to do finances first. So this is absolutely perfect. The way this format is really quick is it's going to be 3 half-hour sessions on a certain topic. The first one is finances, and then we'll move on to others, and we're going to switch in between. And it's a question-answer format if you can't figure that out yet. And what we'll do is we're going to have some questions right now regarding finances with the word cloud. What is the most difficult? Oh, that's right. So we're going to have our finance people introduce themselves first.
I am certainly not a finance person. My name is Mark Bessler. I'm a bariatric surgeon at Columbia University, but I just took the job as chief of surgery at Lenox Hill Hospital starting in July. I'm also the founder of a small startup company called Endobetes, an endoscopic treatment for obesity and diabetes, and that's probably why I'm here.
My name is Atul Madan. I'm in LA in solo private practice. I do mostly bariatrics.
My name is Theodore Grancherov. I'm a professor of surgery at Stanford, also founder of Surgical Safety Technologies. Probably that's why I'm here.
Ali Tavakkoli, MIS bariatric surgeon at the Brigham, chief of the division of general GI surgery. So I do a lot of bad stuff with finance there, and I also have a startup.
All right. So we're going to start out with some questions about related to this first session with our participants. The first question is, what is the most difficult part of managing your finances?
That's for you guys to answer.
That's for you guys to answer. Using the system. Student loans. Okay. Taxes. Time. time. So,
Okay, so along the same lines, next question is, what do you want to learn about finances in this session? So hopefully our answers will kind of cater to some of those.
okay, good.
Okay, as you guys are putting that, that's going to stay on there, so keep adding your questions on there. My first question is probably to Atul, but anyone else can answer too. How do you go about setting up a private practice? And from a financial standpoint, what do you need to account for?
So, and that could be, I could spend 30 minutes on that.
I
So
know it's a
you kind of have to look at where you're setting your private practice and what resources are there for you. Is a hospital help you out? Are you going to have one location, multiple locations? Are you going to be working with a surgery center, without a surgery center? So it's very individualized. So I'm not really answering the question, but you want to look at the resources. And what you have to also look at, here's how I look at my practice. It's an ICU patient, and I look at the ins and the outs, and that's the financial. And you got to make sure you have more in than out. Otherwise, you get dehydrated and go bankrupt. So you really have to look at all the costs. You almost have to predict certain things. You will have unexpected costs. When I started my practice, I made sure I had 6 months of what I thought the cost in the bank account, and I've kept it there. And I don't even know it's there. But you need that. You never know. COVID can happen. GLP-1s can happen. That can lower your volume. So you really need to have that 6 month, I think, when you're starting a practice.
yeah. You don't have to do it. So we'll go.
I mean, I've watched one of my fellows start up a private practice, and I think that in New York City, it was challenging. He had a parent who had an office. They were a psychiatrist, but minimizing that expense up front. He did a lot of out-of-network surgery in New York. That stuff's getting harder and harder to do and going away. Without an affiliation with a surgery center, it was also really, really hard for him until he could pull that off. So I think, like you say, you have to have some pieces in place up front to make it work. I've seen some people fail doing this, just going out and hanging a shingle without making sure that the other pieces were really in place to be able to have success.
I think the affiliations are key, especially when you're in private practice. Who wants to see you succeed, and try to use, work with them and get their resources to help you out as well.
I think one more thing I would add from my experience is that, like you said, ins and outs are important. And when it's your own business, every money you don't spend is yours. And so you have to be very conscious of how you're spending money and start small, grow as your bank account grows. I've seen people make a mistake and go buy marble countertops and huge office spaces they don't need, and then they find themselves $500,000 in debt just to set up a shingle, and there's no patients, there's no revenue, and that will really bury you. So start small. As money comes in, change your countertop spend.
And just to that, about dealing with finances and what people's issues are, avoid debt at all costs early on and start saving early on. I know that's the opposite of what we've just been saying, but in your personal finances, debt is a killer and early savings is the winner.
So I want to move on to our next question was, and basically this is for the businessmen / surgeons here, which are quite a few. How did you go about setting up a private company? How did you go about doing that? Like starting a business, basically, with what you've your idea, your research.
That's a great question. And a lot of people ask me, why did you start a company? And I clearly remember the moment where I got the idea. It was after one of our most recent publications, I was looking back, looking at my PubMed list of publications, and I asked myself how many of those actually reached the patient, and why not. So, and I remembered all these days where I knocked on doors for device manufacturers or hospital administrators and asked them, can we turn some of this research into practice? Can we translate it into practice? And the answer was no. And there were so many reasons why not to do it. So I thought, who else but the academic surgeons should be responsible for this last but also most important piece in the cycle of innovation, which is it starts with an idea, getting research funding, conducting a study, proving the hypothesis, and publishing it, presenting it at a meeting, but then something was always missing, and that was moving it from the research institute to the hospital. And I felt that a great vehicle here is the commercialization vehicle, and I hope that more surgeons and more academic surgeons should take that journey and take responsibility of bringing their research to the bedside.
Yeah, so I think, so as surgeons, I think we often have ideas that we feel can be translated commercially, let's put it that way. And I think the first step in my mind is whether you have a single product or really you have a business idea. I think if you have a single product, you have a device that may do something better, the best avenue is probably licensing that. So you don't necessarily need to start your own company, you give it to someone else to develop it. But if in our case, we had, as Theodore mentioned, we had done some research in the lab. We had an idea which we felt this could be a business. And what we did, we actually limited the presentation of this idea and limited the publication, piled up all the information, and then aimed for a high impact publication. So we had a publication in Nature Material. It caught a lot of attention, and we had kind of prepped the timing that with that publication, we would then license the IP from our institution and start the startup. And then once you start a startup, the decision point is this, is that do you give up your day job and focus on the startup, or do you just find a CEO who leads the idea and you just kind of provide the scientific support? And for me, and I suspect for many of us, the latter is the way to go. So we were lucky to find a CEO. And then once you have a CEO, they spend the first 6 months really structuring the company. And after that, it's all about raising money. Like you just raise money, spend money, raise money, spend money, and hope you're actually advancing the project during that as well.
How do you choose your CEO? How did you decide to choose it? What criteria did you use finding the CEO?
They choose you a lot of the time. Yeah, I mean, you don't have money to pay somebody usually early on, so it's on their job is to go get the money. So they have to believe in this. They have to have had either they're new and have no expenses and they're living on a mattress somewhere, or they've just exited something else and have runway for themselves in their personal lives, and then they believe. So you got to sell them. That's my experience.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, exactly. The key is that they're going to do the first few months of this for free, essentially. And they have an equity in the company, which is great. But the company, you think it's really valuable, but it's really worth less, right? At that point, it's a bunch of expenses. So I think, I think you don't always have a lot of choices. We have a great CEO, and to be honest with you, in preparation for this, we had talked to a lot of people who would have been potentially interested, and we just felt we clicked with this individual person and went on from there.
The money follows the success, if you will. So I did this for a long time on my own with an angel investor, but nobody's investing money in me not having accomplished an exit before. If I haven't made money, they're not investing their money with me. And so a CEO that's exited something, has got a track record, is going to help grease that wheel. And I ran this, like I said, nobody was going to take this early on anyway. You got to get it to a certain point, and you have a publication in Nature Materials. That's maybe the point, right? But where somebody is going to believe in you, but you have to get it to a point where they can sink their teeth into believing in you as a CEO, so that they can then convince people with the money to believe in them as a business person. Because the idea is practically worthless.
Yeah.
It's the execution on that that's really expensive and difficult. It's a skill. We're surgeons, we know how to operate, but actually executing through, the development, the regulatory, the marketing, we have no idea about that. And you learn a lot along the way, but not enough to do it right.
I don't think we should sell ourselves short, though. I think bringing a professional CEO may convince a conventional VC that this is somewhat de-risked. But I think it's also important to make sure that we do business the right way for the right reasons, and that's not always something that comes with multiple exits.
And if you bring in people and money too early, the inventor ends up diluted out to nothing. So if we're talking here about how to make money, you don't make money by having an idea. You make money by executing on that idea. Nobody's paying you for the idea. They just aren't. And so you can't just take an idea and go license it to a company. They'll put your name on it. I've done that a few times, but they're not going to give you a lot of money for your idea until you've reduced it to practice, shown its value, and that takes a lot of money in to get that done. Never mind the patent up front, it's really nothing. And then for a lot of people who are academic up front or even employed in a non-academic environment, your idea belongs to your employer. I mean, if you make a popcorn machine, it doesn't. But if you make a surgical device or a medical technology, it belongs to your employer. Now, they will sometimes spin it out if they don't think they can license it or they can do something with it. But they're going to want a piece of it for that, and so you got to deal with them up front. They're going to put the early money into the patent and stuff like that, but they want it back.
Yeah, so I was going to ask that you license it. How do you go about doing that? Do you have to get a lawyer or what?
Well, I mean, I think if you work, if you're lucky or unlucky, it depends how you look at it. To work in an academic institution, a lot of the framework and the guidelines you have to follow are kind of set out for you. To be honest with you, the institution probably, in terms of licensing, may provide the lawyers, they provide the business contact, they negotiate the terms, and you may want to have someone on yourself to do it, but most of the negotiation ultimately is occurring with the institution, not so much you yourself. Now, in terms of licensing, they still may want you to involve because at the end of the day, it's your idea and you have input with. If you're doing a company, then for us, I think the negotiation becomes much more complicated and there's more flex room, to be honest with you, on terms.
The other thing I would say, you mentioned lawyers. One of my early inventions was actually, I have the second patent in the world on a percutaneous heart valve. I've made zero money from that, but because like I said, the idea is worthless unless you know how to execute on it. And I was a resident and I didn't. But one of the important things was the lawyer that wrote the patent on that was not especially skilled. He left out like one important paragraph that made my valve patent almost worthless compared to the other patents that were out there because they actually did what I'm doing, but with one little twist that let them out of the whole thing. And it could have been, I know now I could write it better than he did. So it's actually your IP up front and how it's written is really important.
We're going to move on. This is interesting, but we have a lot of topics to hit. So a lot of people want to know about retirement planning and investment. And if you guys can go down the kind of row here and just talk a little bit about what's the best way to plan on for retirement and how do you invest it and
So, if you're in your own practice, you want to do what's called a self-employed 401k. You have to be careful because how you structure it, and you need to talk to an accountant and lawyer. But you can actually put a lot of money in. I think it's almost $50,000 a year. There's something called a backdoor Roth IRA. Most of us make too much money to do a regular Roth IRA, so it's called a backdoor Roth IRA. I'm not going to explain it. I barely understand it, but I do it every year. And if unfortunately you missed the deadline for 2023, it was April 15th, unless you're in a disaster area, and then you got till June 17th. By the way, I just Googled this stuff. I did talk to, I have a Chase, I work with Chase a lot. They had their financial advisor talk to me. You can use one of them. They take 1% of a year of what you make. And if you calculate that for your career, that's a lot of money. So if you're not savvy in just investing in stocks, I say just do a S&P 500 fund, reinvest your dividends. I heard that for so many years. I had no idea what it is. It's usually a button on the thing, and it says, "What do you do with dividends? Reinvest it." It's compounded interest in a sense. There's
Well, I said it before. Start early and stay out of debt. If if you're living as a resident or whatever in your first job and you're comfortable enough, don't go crazy when you take that next jump. Start putting it away, because that compounded interest over time and what's called dollar cost averaging over time is you don't go in when it seems good and get out when it seems bad. Nobody knows how to do that. Nobody does. Not computers, not anybody. It's staying in it and sticking with it is really what you got to do. And when you're making money in the market 7.5%, 8% compounded over 20, 30 years of your career, that's a whole lot better than you're going to do trying to jump in and out and time it. And you're paying credit card debt at 21% stuff. You can never get out of that at 7%, a year. So stay out of debt and start early. Stick with it.
So I think for some of us who work in academics, I think about retirement is 3 buckets. So one of it is that the institution puts money away for your retirement. So they contribute to your retirement. In our institution, that goes into an account. I have 0 control over it, and it gets 5% a year. That's how we do it. So low headache, low maintenance, but probably low return. Then on top of that, you can contribute to a retirement account, like one of these account retirements. And in those, your institution usually allows you to invest it in a mutual fund, but the choices are not crazy. You don't have a lot of choices. Your risks are limited and your rewards are limited. So you have some headache, better return. And then, as Saul said, there's this backdoor Roth IRA or whatever. So I do that, and that's my money to take risks. So I do that every year, and on that I put it in like really crazy ideas. Some years I win, some years I lose. I feel I'm doing something, so that makes me feel better. But in reality, when I look at the return, is actually no better than the 5% I was getting at the other. So I do it really mostly for fun and for mental well-being, that I'm doing something actively towards my retirement. The reality is that when I put all these numbers into these fidelity calculators to see how you're doing for retirement, I'm always yellow. I'm never green. And the key is, as Mark said, is because I started late. So the key is start early, invest as much as you can. It doesn't really matter what you do, but if you want to have fun, the Roth IRAs are good.
The only thing I'll add is you should probably buy a house as well, rather than renting.
And time that well, too, right before COVID as opposed to right after.
The other thing you might want to look at is universal health insurance. It's not that popular. Life insurance, sorry. Thank you. But you can. It's a great vehicle to avoid taxes. You actually get loans off of it, so you're not taxed on it. And it's way too complicated to talk about now, but yeah. It's a debate. Yeah, some people say do it after you max out, but yeah. The other thing is, if your university only matches $20 a month, it doesn't sound like a lot, but I did that when I was at University of Tennessee for about 5 years, and I just looked at it a couple days ago. It added up, and that was a long time ago. But you'd think $20 a month isn't much, but it adds up because of compound interest.
That's actually a good point. If you are residents or fellows, check into that before you leave your institution, because a lot of times they have really good plans that you can sign up and they will accrue through perpetuity. So take advantage of that before you leave. Same for disability. If you actually don't have disability coverage, before you leave your institution or as a resident, it's so much cheaper than later in life. And buy that, because that's super important.
So I'm sure some people are thinking, I am so in debt, I can't prevent it because I went to college and medical school. Should I pay off my debt first or should I invest?
For me, it depends on the interest rates on both ends. If you have low interest loans, keep them. I didn't have low interest loans when I went to school. 9% interest on some of my loans. It was insane. So I rolled that into my mortgage in my house as soon as I refinanced my house, as soon as I got a little equity. My wife's got loans at 3%. We're still paying off.
You also have to look if you can get a tax advantage, because in a mortgage you get a tax advantage versus student loans. I think you're limited at $1,000 unless
But
that's
also,
changed.
who knows when they'll get forgiven too?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's a good point.
Don't want to
There's a
pay
lot
them
of
off too
forgiveness
early.
Programs
Yeah.
now, so
Yeah. And then 10 years working in an underserved area. If you pay 10% or something like that, is a certain amount you have to pay. But if you work for 10 years paying at least a base amount in an underserved area, you can get forgiveness of the rest of your physician loans and medical school loans. So that's something to know about if you work in, a lot of these academic institutions tend to be in underserved areas.
So I actually paid the bare minimum on my student loans when I started, and I instead put my money in a 401k and matched while I was doing that, knowing that I would make enough money to finally pay it off later.
Not at 9%, you wouldn't.
No, I didn't have a 9% loan, but
you can refinance those. You can get forbearance and bring the 9% loan down to 4% loan. It's the timing of when you do it, but keep an eye out. When the interest rate falls, that's when you actually file for forbearance. I have another question. Do any of you guys have you dabbled in commercial real estate, anything like that to supplement income or put it towards retirement?
I wish I did. Real estate's great because you get kind of a double whammy. You own a property and then you basically depreciate it, even though it technically appreciates. So you can actually have it where you deduct some of the taxes you're paying on a W-2 if you do it correctly. It has to be an LLC.
So we own a few sort of investment properties. They're not commercial properties. New York City commercial real estate, in the toilet. But if you have a property and you put it into an LLC, so most of us are W-2 employees. W-2 employees cannot deduct stuff in life pretty much. There's almost nothing. And if you have an LLC, that business can deduct. You can deduct a whole lot of stuff, and that property you own, instead of paying taxes on the income you get from the property, you actually depreciate the property, and it's a business expense you can put expenses against. So your income, you can put expenses against that, and you can end up pretty much zeroing it out by things you've bought, a car you've leased through the company. I'm not giving tax advice here. Let's get that out of the way. But doing that has changed our tax burden significantly.
Also, it's a liability protection. So if you do anything outside of your W-2 kind of domain, create an LLC. It takes $150 to do that if you don't use a attorney. But that will protect you with any other venture you do, so you won't personally get sued. The LLC gets sued. It's very important. Okay, sorry. Next question along the same lines is, how do you navigate and negotiate contracts, whether it's personal employment contracts or insurance contracts or whatever? How do you negotiate?
Advice.
I don't want to jump in here, but I just did it. So I left my job of 28 years, leaving my job of 28 years, and I was a resident there as well. I never negotiated a contract during that entire time. The first time I looked to leave, I hired a lawyer. I paid that lawyer $12,000. I got really nothing of value out of that, only that I was so scared to take the job because he kept bringing up problems with the contract. So there's a bunch of things to this. One is you have to have trust or not in the people you're going to be working with. Two, you got to know what you really want out of that job. Is it money? Is it time? Is it security? Is it something else? And that's what you got to be negotiating towards, and let some of the other stuff go. And that's going to be a personal decision. And the last thing is, and learn this negotiation thing. It's called a BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Is that I'm leaving? Is that I'm staying at my job? Is that I'll take whatever you'll give me because I don't have a best alternative? And your negotiation, you have to decide is like, if I can't get this, am I done? Or am I willing to be done so I can push hard enough to get it? Because, the other side is just also trying to take care of themselves, right? So it's how you get to yes is what you're willing to back and forth on, and when you're willing to walk away.
So, I mean, I don't have great advice. What I do tell people is that when you're negotiating, don't get too stuck up on money. And I mean that because I think what you want to create out of a negotiation is value. And value is not always translated into money. So as an example of that, you could get a job, pays you 325,000 and gives you half PA to help you with your clinical practice versus a job that gives you 75,000, so 50,000 more, part of which you pay tax, but you don't have a half a PA and you have to run around do your work. So it becomes choices. So I tell people when you're negotiating, think about value, what matters to you and that values for you, and try to get that. Don't get too stuck up, stuck on dollars and 10,000 up, 10,000 down. And at the end of the day, if you have a good job, if you have good boss, if you have good colleagues, that's priceless. Just take it.
Anyone else?
I have some wisdom in this too. Never show your hands up front. That's really important. Know your non-negotiables. So the things that you care for, whether it's like half day off on Friday or an extra PA or whatever it is, keep that on your back pocket and let the negotiations go back and forth. If any of you guys have seen that show, what is it, Storage Wars or something like that, where they negotiate back and forth, and all of a sudden someone comes in from the left field and wins the storage closet or whatever. It's really important because both parties need to walk away from a negotiation thinking they won. So if you're steadfast and you don't give anything, the other person will either give you what you want but feel horrible about it, or just you won't get what you want. So always give and take. Remember what you want to give, you're willing to give, but don't give it up front. Let them work for it a little bit so they feel good about taking that, and then you can hopefully walk away with what you want.
Remember, you're building a relationship, not just a contract when you do that, which is, I think, partly what you're saying. And so you don't want to be too difficult or, be stepped on either. But really help to understand what it is they need and ask them to understand what it is you need so that you can help each other get there. It's if I can give you what you need, then you can give me what I need. But if I'm just asking for stuff that doesn't meet your metric, we're not going anywhere.
And this works for insurance contracts too, actually. I have a lot of experience with that. And it's really important to use the same skills when you're contract or negotiating with an insurance company.
I was going to say, I completely agree with what Mark said. Don't over negotiate and don't let the lawyer negotiate on your behalf. I think understanding what's important to you and choosing the people you'll be working with, trustworthy people, I think these are important things to consider and have.
But have a lawyer look it over and give you some advice, because sometimes you just don't understand exactly what it means there, and some things are really scary to read that aren't, and some things seem pretty benign that are pretty significant.
Yeah.
In the interest of time, we'll switch, but there are some more questions we can maybe ask in the question and answer session.
Let's thank a panel. Thank you, guys. And so we'll have the next panel come up. So that's our advancement panel. And while they're coming up, we've got, again, some questions for you. So in one word, and again, you go on the app and you go to the link where the audience response is. In one word, how would you describe your plan for advancement?
No one has any plans.
Guys, open your app.
Let's see here.
You're all a blank slate.
No
Passive.
one's advanced.
There we go. Here we got something.
No plan.
Hope. I like this. Leadership, work.
Okay, we're going to need help with this.
Oh, there we go. Efficiency. Okay. Niche. There we go. Connections.
These are all 1% as provided.
It's very interesting. Yeah, it looks like it's just they're all equal. Everybody has kind of a different.
Okay, so as you're doing this next question, what do you want to learn about advancement from our esteemed colleagues here? Carrie, can you switch the question? Thanks.
So, what do you want to learn out of this session?
So while you guys are answering, maybe you all can introduce
Go ahead.
yourselves.
Yeah, introduce yourselves and.
Hi, my name is Valerie Halpin. I'm a bariatric surgeon in Portland, Oregon. And I think I'm here because I have so many leadership titles listed in my SAGE's portfolio. I'm currently the bariatric medical director of our program. I'm also a senior medical director within the Legacy Medical Group, which is a physician group of a 7-hospital system. I have about 8 programs that report up through me. And I'm also currently medical staff president at our hospital. And I've had multiple medical staff leadership roles leading up to that. And I am also a clinical professor of surgery for Washington State University, which is a relatively new medical school. And then from another leadership standpoint, I am also the board chair of a nonprofit board in our community, a regional outdoor school. So I have a lot of leadership hats on, and I got a lot to say about that.
Thank you. I'm Stephen Stain. I'm the chief of surgery lay clinic. I guess I'm not sure why I got asked, but I've had some opportunities in different organizations to be advanced up to be a leader. I just finished a term as president of the American Surgical Association. I was chair of the American Board of Surgery. I was chair of the RRC, and I've been president of a few societies. So advancement, I think, is something which kind of happened organically, and it wasn't something that I had actually ever had planned for.
Can't imagine why you're up here. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brian Duncan. My current role is I'm the Chief Medical Officer for the Endoscopy Division at Boston Scientific. Joined the company about 5 years ago. Prior to that, had a lot of different roles in academic surgery, ran a division, professor of surgery, ran an education and research institute, past president of this society, which was an honor of a lifetime, and worked my way up from the endoscopy working group, which was a breakfast club, all the way up to where it is now. So happy to be here.
Thank you, all of you. So the first question we have is, how do you navigate advancement in an institution or a hospital? Like, how do you plan for it? How do you plan it out, or essentially?
Well, I certainly didn't plan it. So for all of you that had no plans, you're fine. I actually got involved in advancement mostly because I wanted to be involved in the decisions that involved my working environment. And that is still my primary motivation for leadership. And so for me, it really just started up by speaking up and out in our morbidity and mortality conferences and things like that. And people notice when you have an opinion. And actually, in community hospitals, which where I am, there's actually a little bit of a dearth of people desiring to be leaders. And so if you actually act like a leader, they will tap you to be a leader. And then if you do a good job, they'll continually say, hey, we need somebody to do this. I think it's exactly the opposite of academic medicine, where there are all these people who are jockeying to be leaders. Community is totally the opposite.
Well, I think, so my course is, I did what I liked. I liked taking care of patients. And I think I tried to be very, very good at taking care of patients. And that's still, although, you know, I do a whole bunch of things administratively, I think you have to be very good at what your primary thing is, whether it's research or whether it's clinical care or education. You have to be an expert of things that you both do well and also enjoy. And because of that, you know, I'm in too many societies. But because of that, I can network with people. And I got, you know, I was in Western Surgical. I was on the board of governors of SAGE. I did all these things, and I met a lot of people. but when I got an assignment, I did it very well. Tried to, at least. So, I'm a regent of the American College of Surgeons. That started because I was active in my chapter, the Southern California chapter of the American College of Surgeons. I enjoyed that. My first paper I ever gave was at the chapter meeting. And then when I moved, to Nashville, they had a great chapter. So I was a American College of Surgeons person, and then from that, I got picked to be a Board of Governor person. So I think you can't be involved in as many organizations as you may want, but the ones you are involved with, put time into it. Don't, do what I'm going to do today, fly in this morning, leave tomorrow. Typically, you stay for the meeting, get to know people, and those things, I think, where you get noticed. And then somebody who has a lot more seniority than you will notice that you're doing all these things well, and that's how you get picked for advance, whether it's in your department, your hospital, or in your society.
And I'm sorry, is the question advancement in your institution or just in general? Yeah. I mean, I strongly agree with the meritocracy piece. Like when you get asked to do something, do it well, do it completely, do it on time, be responsive. One of the best pieces of advice I got when I was in Sages and kind of moving up, just because I like doing the work and working with the people, was, Brian, you got to answer your email more promptly, because if you don't, you're not going to go any further. Like, you got to be available. So, but I think it is built on the meritocracy on doing good work. I will say that moving over to industry has been eye-opening to me, because industry, at least my company, spends a huge amount of time on people development. A lot of focus on it, a lot of responsibility around it, and there's an intentionality to it that I've never experienced before. And so I've learned a bit about that too. So I think if you have a goal in mind, to have some intentionality about that, find a mentor that can that you're comfortable talking to, make known to your division lead or chair or whoever that is, that, hey, I'm thinking about this and I'd like to get to that. Any advice for me on how to do that? So I'd have some intentionality about making your desires known, and then, keep your head down at times and do good work.
So along that line, and I think you've answered a little bit about that. What are the keys to advancing? At Sages, the keys to advancing in academic departments. What do you think the keys are for academics in societies?
Well, I'm not sure. I don't know, but I'm not sure it's that different in different arenas. I think you got to do well, and I can tell you, so many people when I was active in Sages, Bruce Shermer, George Bershey, they noticed me, and they gave me a committee assignment. SSAT, Carlos Pellegrini, put me on the Health Policy Committee. Eventually, I became the chair of that committee. And what you may not recognize is you're always being watched by people, and that may be because you do a good job or because you don't do a good job. And not that I will remember what you did, but I remember the person who got up and gave a great presentation at a meeting, or got up and gave a great discussion of a paper. And I think those things you do get you noticed. And there's a ton of people from Fabrice Michelacci to Courtney Townsend who have noticed me and then helped me along the way.
You're in a different environment.
Yeah.
certainly have,
Well, I would agree. As someone who is constantly looking for people to fulfill roles, I am watching everyone all the time and how they perform, how they respond. Exactly. If you don't respond in a timely manner in order for me to complete the work that I need to do, I do not consider you a viable candidate for a leadership role. We want people that are responsive, and then you also need to have the ability to work collaboratively with others Sometimes surgeons, we struggle a little bit with that. I personally struggle with that a little bit. And so I would agree, like you said, in industry, I work at an organization where they spend a lot of effort on physician leadership development. It's an entire another category of learning that's different from what we learn as physicians. It's 100% translatable to the work that we do as physicians. It would not be a waste of your time to seek formal leadership training. A lot of it involves emotional regulation, and I mean, a lot of leadership training is emotional regulation. Understanding why you are responding to conflict the way you do, and how do you change your own response to become more effective at managing others. So we get a lot of training about that at my institution, and I think it makes us more effective in every single aspect of our jobs and personal lives, just everywhere. Probably managing with insurance companies. You know, if you can stay calm when someone else is getting upset, you can hold the line. So
Along that line, I'm going to go off script a little bit. So, what kind of training do you think you will need to become a successful leader? And additional training? Do you need an MBA? Do you not? What do you recommend for people whose ultimate goal is to get into some sort of leadership capacity? What should they plan on learning?
certainly, I think degrees like MBAs are effective, especially if you want to move around from institution to institution. If you want to be an administrator, yes. If you don't know that you want to be administrator, which I'm guessing is a lot of the younger people in the room, I don't know that I would necessarily put that effort into it. I have not. I was about to sign up right before the pandemic, and I just thought I can't donate one more weekend to any professional thing. So I said no. There are lots of other opportunities for leadership. Those of you that are in education, the college has amazing courses for leadership. There's surgeons as educators. That's actually a lot about leadership. And they have other leadership offerings. So I would encourage you to look at those things and network. Like, that's number one there on the word thing. What I do at Sages is I come and I talk to all of the people who I've known for the last 20 or 25 years, and I talk to them about all my leadership problems. And I get advice from them, and I ask people for help. How would you manage this? That's probably one of the best things you can do is build your network so that you can ask someone who's remote from a problem how to handle it.
So I've never had any formal leadership training, and there was a great panel at the College of Leadership and Advocacy Summit, and they had Julie Freishog, Selwyn Vickers, Glenn Steele, Bob Higgins, and many of them said in today's atmosphere, it's probably a good idea to get leadership and get an MBA or a master's. You know, so I think increasingly, if you're going to go up to be CEO level, those things may be important. I've done quite well by having an MBA whose office is next door to me, and I go ask her questions about almost everything. And I think I have a sort of a business sense of what's going to work, but I have to be able to go talk to a CFO, and that's been the model I've used. I think as far as interpersonal training, I have been mistreated by a number of people throughout my career. And I remember every one of those and say, I do not want to do that to people. There was an experience I had 25, 30 years ago where someone told me, you're down to the final two candidates. I'm going to tell you in a month which one I'm going to pick for a job. 3 months later, I hadn't heard. I called and they were negotiating with the other person. So even though it may seem like a minor thing, when I am recruiting people, I always am honest what the time is, when I'm going to give you an answer. And I think just because I remember how bad I felt 25 years ago when they picked somebody over me.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a lot to tell. I will say that again, with my transition and the comments I made about people development and people leadership, there is a methodology to this that I actually wish we did more of in healthcare. I do think in healthcare in general, we rise to leadership positions because we've been around for a while and because we say yes. But people leadership is a different thing, and that and there's actually a science to it. So when I joined Boston Scientific, in my first week, I was assigned an HR partner. I have a full-time HR partner to help me manage my team. The first thing they came to me and they said, Brian, great, glad you're on board. I'm your HR partner. We got to know each other a little bit. They said, okay, let's talk about your succession plan. And I'm like, I just got here. What are you talking about? It's like a leader develops those under them in order to succeed them, and they have a plan in place. If you get hit by a bus tomorrow, we need a succession plan. And so I've learned in that experience that there's actually a science to human resources. Every one of you has access to a human resource person. In almost any environment you're in, go knock on their door. You might be surprised at what you learn from them about people management, arrangement of teams, how to make people successful, how to reward people on your teams and help them to ascend, which is all the things that they work on. I had the honor of giving a talk here at Sages a couple of years ago about what I had learned in this transition, and I talked about some of these things. I didn't realize there were HR people in the audience at that talk that came up to me afterwards to shake my hand and say, nobody treats us like we're a profession. You think that that's like the office in the basement where you go fill out your paperwork for your benefits kind of thing. So go knock on their door, and they can be helpful for you. If you're setting up a team, if you're building a division, if you're building a department, find a good HR partner.
Along that line, if you have different opportunities that knock on your door, how do you assess which one's the right one for you? And how do you screen out the right ones from the wrong ones?
I say yes too much, but I'm now at a place in life where actually I can no longer say yes. I'm completely maxed out, about 50% more than I can do, and so I have had to cull a number of things off of my plate the last couple of years, and some of them are just things like, well, I've done this long enough. Someone else needs the opportunity to do this. So I'm not going to do that anymore. In terms of new opportunities, it kind of goes back to negotiating the contract. You should be thinking about, what is it that you really want? Do you have something clinical you want to achieve? Do you have financial goals you want to get? Do you have lifestyle goals that you want to achieve because you're going to be raising your family? Or, I don't know, you have a professional sports hobby or something like that. Who cares? It doesn't matter. But having a good internal sense of what is it that I want for this next period of time in my life, and how is this opportunity going to help me get there?
So I interpret that question about maybe an advancement, but changing jobs and moving across the country. And I'm in California. I was talking to David. I'm from California. Why would you ever leave California? I left 25 years ago and I can't get back. I took jobs. The first job I took when I left USC was, me and my boss didn't see eye to eye on some things, and I decided I was going to move. But to be able to move, I had to have been productive and successful what I was doing, and it took a long time to find a good job. It wasn't like the first place that I went to, they said, hey, well, come on, we can move out here to Portland and you can be working. No, I did a lot of interviews with jobs that I didn't get. And then as I moved 2 more times, you can be the most successful person in your own mind. And there are a lot of people who got other chair jobs that I didn't get, that I knew I was better than them. But the person doing the hiring didn't think so. And I think you have to have some self-confidence that if you don't get picked for a position, whether it's a division chief, to be on a board, to do anything, it may not be that there's anything wrong with you. I'm still married, and my wife takes these losses a lot harder than I do. 36 hours, I'm over it. Oh, they picked Dr. So-and-so. They didn't pick me. and I think you have to be willing to put yourself out there for opportunities, and it takes being vulnerable to apply for a job when you may not get it. And that I think has been something that it's hard on your family when you go for a job, get to the end and they pick somebody else. But I think advancement may mean that you have to move if the position you're in is not the right one for you.
I mean, if someone's knocking on the door asking me to do something, I really think there are three things that go through my mind. One is, am I qualified to do that thing? Sometimes we stretch a little bit, and stretching a little is good, but being a poser is not. So make sure you're qualified to do the thing. Second, make sure you have the bandwidth to do it. Nobody likes someone to sign up for something and then not deliver. And I think all of us would much rather have someone be honest with us up front and say, look, I just can't do that right now, no matter how exciting it is. And third is it exciting and fun? And that doesn't necessarily, it's not like necessarily ha-ha fun, but it's more like, is this going to have an impact? Is it going to allow me to be something, part of something bigger than myself? Is it going to reach people in a way that I couldn't do if I was sitting here alone, kind of thing? And so it can be hard work and it can be difficult work, but that can be fulfilling work as well. So those are kind of my criteria for it.
Just a theme I hear, which I don't know if anybody's heard of Ryan Holiday. He's a big proponent of promoting stoicism, but one of his big points is it's okay to say no, and you should say no. And not to think of no as you're missing an opportunity, but you're saying yes to an opportunity you might want to do later on. And so not like I was like, Val, yes. But then all of a sudden your plate's too full and you can't get things done. So it's important to be able to say no to things so that you can say yes to something that might be, more interesting for you.
But if there's something you really want to say yes to, how do you get yourself recognized so someone offers you that opportunity to say yes to it? Besides showing up and doing your work.
Well, I've done a lot of work for free. That's a potential way in the door. There are ways to get involved in things, especially that don't involve compensation. And if you volunteer, I've started that way with a number of things that I currently get paid for. I did it before I got paid for it. And then I would just continually renegotiate. I should be getting paid for this. I should be getting paid for this. I should be getting paid for this. And so that's one way. I'm sure you gentlemen have different ways.
So I got an incredible email yesterday from somebody who's a full professor at his institution, head of a division. We gave the oral boards together 15 years ago. And then we gave him a second time, actually in St. Louis, and I brought my daughter. I always bring my kids over when I can. He remembers meeting a daughter. And then when I got to make appointments with the American Surgical, somebody in his institution sent me an email about him. And the fact that that person thought enough of him to ask me if I could give him this position. And this person sent me such a great email. I say, I think I've met the guy 4 times. And he said how much of an impact I've had on his career. I think I met him when I gave grand rounds or when he was a resident too. So, but it's one of those things where, it takes other people helping you to get put in front of people. And I think it doesn't mean that I have to know everybody and every specialty, but I remember Brian when he was at Methodist. I mean, it was a shock that he gave us incredible clinician, incredible researcher, incredible educator. And he had enough ego strength to give it all up, to go do what may have been a better experience. So, but somebody must have noticed him that he had the skills to step outside his comfort zone to do something that was special. So.
I think part of this and what you're talking about, it's a little bit about laying a foundation so that you do get chosen for those things that you really want to do. Networking is important, but I'm not a natural networker. It's not what I do. I've learned the importance of it, and it becomes easier when your network becomes your friends, and then that's just easy. But you have to do it with authenticity. You're not just there to kind of beg for things, and it is to meet and do that. The other thing is get a reputation for making problems go away. So and that's in clinical practice or in life. Like if you're the person that when you knock on their door, you're not a problem to them. You're the person that's going to make their problem go away. Then they're gonna be
Ask you to make
receptive.
some of their problems go away.
Yeah, they're going to be receptive to that desire of, hey, I want this thing. And then having that network is when people can advocate for you on your behalf for that as well.
Thank you very much. This was very enlightening.
Yeah.
We can have our third group up. Thank you. While that's coming up, the audience, we can start with what kind of media, if any, are you using to build your personal brand? If you are doing any of that, you can go ahead and respond. Go into the app, guys.
Instagram. Ooh, conversation's getting big. I don't know. Bento.
No, isn't that like some sort of Japanese lunchbox?
The company formerly known as Twitter.
I love none. That would be me. And then the next question, thank you, would be, what do you want to learn about marketing and branding in this next session? As they're answering, if you guys can go and introduce yourselves, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, hi, I'm David Spain, professor of surgery and program director at Stanford.
Andrew Brahim, general surgeon at the University of Michigan, health services researcher, and have a decent Twitter following, which I think ropes me into this group.
Justin Dimmick, I'm the chair of the surgery at the University of Michigan. Not quite sure why I'm up here, but we'll discover
Just a
that.
great speaker. Okay, as people are keep putting it up because we'd like to kind of see what you're thinking. But I'd like to ask the first question, and this is just basic. What is the difference between marketing and branding? Because they're often used interchangeably and they're very different. So if you guys can enlighten us a little bit.
So I'm also married to an MBA, so this could go a lot of directions. I think in marketing, when you're actually trying to sell a product, but in branding, you're actually defining what you are, what your principles are, and what you try to stand for. So my other life outside of medicine is in architecture. So I was a senior principal of one of the largest firms in the world for about 6 years. And we, as a firm, loved to design airports. And so when you go to our website, you see airports. And when you read our content that goes out in op-eds, it's about airports. And we developed a brand to say, if you on an airport, we're the person you come to. And it's not that much different than what you do if you're setting up a practice or trying to build a new service line. You kind of brand that way. So kind of connecting to our previous conversation, I'm thinking about some of my resident mentees who are like, why'd you ask me to write that book chapter? And I said, well, I don't know what you want to write, and someone needs to write this. So you're like undifferentiated, and you end up getting that assignment. Or they said, sometimes I feel guilty about it, so then I write the book chapter by myself. And they say, oh, I would have loved to have written that. And I said, how could I have known? You've never told me your brand or the thing you're interested in. How could I have known you wanted to write a chapter about that thing? So I think establishing your presence and what you care about.
Not a lot to add. the way I think about it is your brand is how people perceive you. And we just heard this great panel on all the things that you do to get asked to do things. And so who you are and how you project yourself, how you show up in your email and in person is your brand, right? The quality of your work, the quality of your committee work in a society, that's part of your personal brand. It's how people perceive you. Branding is like a little more active and kind of more corporate, but like everybody has a brand, whether you want one or not. Marketing are the activities that you partake to get your brand out there, right? The activities that you undertake, whether that's marketing your services, as Andrew was talking about. That's how I think about it.
So, what tips do you have for successfully branding yourself or marketing yourself? Both, I guess.
I think it depends on what type of brand or branding you're talking about, right? Like, as you said, everybody has a brand, and the most important one is your day-to-day work, right? If you're talking about, we talk about advancement, all this kind of stuff, like, if you're not consistent and good at home, then ultimately it's going to catch up with you. So the first brand is, who am I at work? And, for me, my thing is, I try to be prompt, try to do what I say I'm going to do, and I try to be consistent.
I'll say so. So last night when I was like leaving my house, my wife's like, "What is your topic about?" And I told her it was marketing and branding, and she's very confused because that's like her domain. And she's like, "Should I be there giving this talk?" And I said in like one line, what would like Ross Business School say on this topic? And she said it's very easy to market or brand a product if it's a good product. And I think that kind of underscores David's point, like having the substance to back it up is much more effective than worrying about the style of your font and the colors. Those things matter, but not nearly as much as the product. And so as like a thought exercise, my wife's in the process of starting her own company. And so we've been studying similar companies, and it's amazing. You can see an Instagram account overnight get 1 million followers because their first post was just, the content was so good. You're like, I want to know about that. Whereas like some people are like, oh, I got to inch at it. So I think trusting the quality of your product drives that a fair bit.
So this panel is titled Dirty Little Secrets, right? So I think one of the dirty little secrets that Andrew just brought out here was the notion that if you build a brand and there's no substance behind it, then you're building a house of cards and it will eventually collapse. And that has a lot to do with like what your personal brand is, right? Having a great national reputation if you don't take good care of patients at home is bad, right? Like that's not something you want to do. So the brand is an extension of yourself, but should reflect the underlying substance that you bring to the table. I think that's kind of the dirty little secret, and people are looking for this, right? When we talked in that last panel, we heard about everyone's watching and seeing what you're doing. They see how you show up. Like that's people checking to see if your brand is consistent with how you show up in the roles in which you're put in, right? Every leadership role, every opportunity you have to lead a project is an audition. And I tell people that. I'm like, you said you want to be a division chief. We're going to give you this set of, we're going to give you this project that will allow you to develop that competency, that will allow you to tell the story about that. And this is an audition, right? We expect these deliverables. We expect this execution. And then at the end, you tell them you didn't deliver on this. Maybe that wasn't the right competency for you to build. Maybe that's one of the right roles. But all of that is part of building your brand.
I have a little plaque on my desk and it says, be fearlessly authentic. So you have to be real. And so my dirty little secret is that the circles in academic surgery are really small. And the further up you get, the smaller they are. And they get smaller all the time. Like, it's easier to find people and get a hold of people. Like, I don't have Justin's cell phone number, but I have Andrew's. So if I needed to talk to Justin, I could call Andrew and say, could you have him call me? And he would call me in like 24 hours, right? In the old days, I had to write a letter and put a stamp on it and put it in the mail, and right? So now, like, the ability to connect with people is so much easier. And so if you're up for a job, somebody's just going to call, right, and say, is this person any good? So if you're not good at home, if you're not great taking care of patients and you're not responsive at home, eventually it's going to catch up with you, and you're not going to get that division chief or that leadership job because you're not authentic, right? So first is your first brand is at home. You just got to be good at what you do every day.
going to clinical setting, besides competency, which is what I'm hearing here, what other adjectives, adverbs do you think you need to utilize to build a brand, to get referrals, become clinically successful, especially if you're early career? What kind of things do you need to do to build that reputation? Besides just being great.
Yeah, early on, you got to say yes a lot, right? Say yes, especially to clinical opportunities. Again, you got to be important what you say yes and no to, but you got to be available, right? It's the 3 A's, affable, available, and least importantly, able, right? But so you got to do those, right? You got to be around, and more and more it's teamwork, team science, team clinical care. You got to be able to work with people. Trust me, I struggled with that early on in my career. So you really got to be able to work in teams.
There's the piece of having a substance, right? But then the marketing, the activities actually are important too. And our residents like to describe themselves. They like to split people into like, well, I'm a workhorse, not a show pony, right? And like what I'm mostly interested in are show horses, people that like have the substance but also can communicate and sell well. Because if you write the world's greatest American novel and then like put it in your shelf, like it hasn't made other people can't enjoy that, right? So there is this piece where if you have a good product, you have to be able to get it out into the world. So I'm looking for people that have substance and style, so to speak. And there are some people that have neither substance nor style. We call those jackasses. That's kind of the joke. But like, you said this was Dirty Little Secrets panel. Sorry. So I think there is this piece where how do you get out into the world? And I think you come to stages and you show your videos. Like that's a really good way to get your skills and your communication out there. All the Facebook opportunities that exist for posting your clinical work are a great one. But I think it does matter to be able to get out there and show people what you can do. So, and that communication piece actually is important to some degree.
I think in the private world, if anyone's interested, you got to talk to your colleagues too. I think that's super important because your referrals don't come from your cohorts. They come from people of other specialties, which even if you show your video, they might not recognize if you're a good surgeon or a bad surgeon. But if you pick up the phone call and call them back after the referral and thank them and give them your assessment over the phone instead of them waiting 3 weeks later to get your email or letter or whatever, I think people appreciate that. So I think human relations and interaction really go a long way in the real world.
When we were building our bariatric program, we bought bagels and like went out and handed brochures, and we made things easy, right? We left a packet of brochures with our phone numbers and links to our website that they can hand out to patients for bariatric programs. And those, that immediately, when you buy people bagels and show up in their office, that immediately increases referrals. So those human connections important.
I think that responsiveness, someone said, be responsive. And it's not just you, your office staff needs to be responsive too. People need to answer the phones. We have a GI group in our community that literally, I personally sat on the phone for their back line, not even their front line, for like 35 minutes before someone answered the phone. That is a recipe for disaster. You're never going to get a referral that way. So pay attention to those things. When I first opened my practice, I actually pretended to be a patient, called my number, acted like a patient, see how they answered, how polite were they, how responsive were they. If you set up a practice, please do that because it's really, you just don't know how people are behaving under your name when you're not there. So I think it's important.
I think that's a good point. The people who work under you, they're your face. So they're the face of the public. So you really want to make sure that they reflect what the values and the attitudes you want to show. So any common mistakes that you've seen people when they're trying to brand themselves?
I'd say there's sometimes this sense of urgency. Like I got to get my website out there now. I got to brand myself this thing. I remember I have this one resident in mind first week of intern year, asks for a meeting with me and says, Andrew, I am passionate about learning how stadiums are designed to inform the way we create hospitals. I was like, oh my God, that's like kind of what I have an expertise in. 1 month later, I have like a new grant funded in a totally different topic. New meeting. Andrew, I'm passionate about hospital networks and how consolidation networks. And I'm like, dude, this is like the third topic you told me you're passionate about in the last like 3 months. Like, I think you're just chasing shiny objects. And I think one thing we don't teach or do well, we're so used to just jumping through hoops and doing the next thing. That's how we all got here. We know what score we needed on the MCAT. We learned who could help us write the essay. We knew how to do well on our boards. We knew who to email to get into that residency. We learn how to jump through the hoops, but we don't block out time to reflect, like, what do I actually want to do? Like, what do I actually want to study? And then go find that person. And so just in the medical school last week, I was asked to give a talk about career planning. And someone asked me how to work in an architecture firm while being a surgeon. And I said, like, the more important question is, like, do you even want to do that? Like, do you spend like 1 hour a week? This is my gift to you. Spend 1 hour a week to just sit with yourself and think, what are the things I actually enjoy doing? Put those in a column. Things I don't enjoy doing. How do I augment the things that I enjoy? How do I minimize the things I don't enjoy? So I learned early in my faculty career, I liked working with residents in their research time. So I blocked out office hours for any resident doing research who wanted to come to my office. It filled up really quickly, and that was like a good source of joy. And I didn't like being on a couple committees, and I asked to be removed from them, and I was removed. But it doesn't happen unless you take that hour a week to really reflect on, like, what do you actually want before you get to the website and the whatever, and all that.
Mistakes. Yeah, I think the biggest mistake people do is they don't like stop and say, why am I doing this? Like, right, what do I want to do? Right? Because no matter what you want to do, there's some avenue to do it, right? There's some opportunity out there. But people they just go to the next obvious thing, or they keep climbing the ladder because it feels like that's the next thing to do, without really stopping and asking, like, what is it I enjoy? What do I want to do? What's fun for me? Thanks.
So, as surgeons, do you feel it's important to use social media to build a brand or market yourself, or are there other avenues that may be more successful or, more true to who we are? And I'd like to hear what you all have to say about that.
No.
Yes, I think definitely.
No, it can be important. Maybe. It can be important. I don't think it's necessary, depending on what you're trying to achieve, right? What your brand is, like, So I think there are some places it can be very helpful, but I don't think it's necessary for everybody to do it.
I think a concept I learned from Justin very early on is, as you find the thing that you're excited about, that you want to work on, that you want to lean into, you somehow have to plant your flag that that's the thing you're committed to. Whether if it's surgical education, then write the op-ed for one of our surgical journals about innovative strategies to enhance surgical education. Get on the med school clerkship committee, kind of compound your advantages, but kind of send out the same bat signal in multiple places. I think social media can be one way to do that. In the architecture world, nobody uses Twitter, but they use LinkedIn and Instagram. And so kind of choose your medium based on the audience you're trying to reach. But if you can send out your bat signal or plant your flag, it brings you a lot of joy. It's like, oh my gosh, everyone's asking me to do the thing. That's exactly what I want to do. And I think it's hard for people to know without you telegraphing that.
So as a department chair, I'll give a department approach in this. I think it's important for us to cultivate our digital spaces with content so people can understand who we are. And that really is branding and marketing, right? That's exactly what that is from a corporate perspective. I think when individuals, I think if you don't want to engage in social media, that's great, don't engage. But I think people can do it effectively. And like Dr. Spain, for example, right? Program director at Stanford does engage and engages in a way that people can kind of understand who he is a little bit as a person. And I think that has been a positive impact on the Stanford residency brand. Like, I know about it, and like I haven't been to Stanford except once, maybe in the last decade. Like, I kind of have a sense of the vibe there. So I do think that if leaders in the departments engage in that in a productive way like that, it can be beneficial to especially in this era and during COVID in particular, where you couldn't interact in person.
Yeah, I think in that space, it is important. So it has been very beneficial, I think, for our program, right, to have some social media presence and does let us, get out there and get in contact with people. So in that part, I think it is worthwhile. I don't think you have to do it, but you can use it to your benefit.
So what should you avoid on social media?
That's a long list.
Yeah. Trolls. Avoid trolls. You just have to ignore a lot of people, right? There's always going to be somebody out there that wants to engage you in a war, and you just have to ignore them. You never win. You never win.
I think even if you do, let's say you want to take a slightly controversial position just because you're interested in it, you may just phrase it in the third person and say, look at this interesting study that's come out where so-and-so described, which I did recently. And it was just interesting to watch the results. I said, I'm not like supporting the study. I just think it's interesting. I want to see what people think. And so I think there are ways to still be provocative and take a position and keep yourself in a safe group. But in general, it's probably, in the modern era, it's probably reasonable to hedge on sticking more to facts and being a little more objective as part of your brand to do that.
And just remember, anything you say on social media is forever, and people are screenshotting it and sending it to their friends. So be really careful how you engage, and just pretend that everything you write on any social media platform, everyone's looking at, because they probably are or will be, especially if it's problematic. So, in particular, like one thing that I see people do is ad hominem attacks, right? Like if someone doesn't like your paper, saying that this person is like an idiot or something, like this happens all the time on our social media platforms. And this is not the place for ad hominem attacks. It's a place for the exchange of ideas and like an earnest discussion of ideas. And like if somebody responds with evidence and then you say that, well, you're an a-hole, like that's just not like a great way to engage. And now that's your brand, right? You're the guy who makes ad hominem attacks on Twitter, right? Don't let that be your brand.
I think what was the advice? Where it's emails, I guess. I am full disclosure. I don't have an Instagram account. I don't have a Facebook account. I don't get involved. But the advice for emails is, if you're upset, write your email and don't send it for a couple hours.
I write a lot of angry emails. I just don't send them. So write it and actually delete the addressee so you can't accidentally send it, right? So delete the addressee, and then I write a really angry email, and then I put it in my draft box, and then the next day I look at it and I go, oh, that's awesome. Delete.
Have your institutions engaged in any paid marketing campaigns? And if so, how do you assess the return on investment? And have some been more successful than others that you'd be willing to share?
Not that I know of. No, so our department hired it's not PR, but she's
Communications.
Communication, right? So Dr. Mary Hahn hired this Rachel, and she's like our communications manager, and I thought, that is like, no. And then we hired her, and I'm like, 5 years later, I'm like, that was brilliant. Right? It's a good move. Like, because again, as you're saying, like when, recruiting residents and stuff, like when your residents are presenting at SAGES and having, or one of your faculty members is president, Carla Pugh is president, SBAS, like, Rachel went there, like tweeted it. It was a brilliant move. And so, for a department investing in somebody who made that their job and promoted, across the whole department, it was really worthwhile.
Yeah, and we have a communications team, and I think they're fantastic. It's a fantastic investment. When you think about like marketing as an institution, I mean, University of Michigan does a ton of marketing, and so they'll market our service lines in different ways. But you'd have to talk to them about the ROI on that.
Yeah.
Just like on a smaller scale, I can give my perspective from architecture world and kind of my wife's business world. You usually have some set outcome you're targeting. Like, we want X number of people to download this PDF on this topic, or we want to drive traffic from this kind of market. So I think if you're going to make any substantial investment, X number of referrals to your practice, it's good to have a very concrete expectation and outcome of what you hope to achieve. And if you do that and go to a marketing person, they actually are pretty good experts on this topic and they can tell you how to achieve that outcome. So I think having some clarity about what you're actually trying to achieve is very helpful.
So how do you build a department chair, right? But how do you build a department, build a division, or go from an idea?
Can I ask a question on that? Sure. I'm dying to ask Justin this question. So we're talking about dirty little secrets. So, several years ago, you guys came up with the Michigan Promise, right? And I saw that. My first response was, oh, come on. But as an outsider, I look at that, like, that clearly is very authentic for you guys. Like, that's your touchstone. And it seems like everything you do comes back to that, right? That cartoon, right? You have your promise and all the points on it. So as an outsider, to me, that just feels like it's become sort of a centering touchstone for what you do there. So, right impression, good impression, right?
Well, to answer your question first, my department was built when I got there, so that's kind of the easy part. I didn't have to build it from the ground up. The branding and around the Michigan Promise, I think, is a great case study, because you always hear whenever you take a visioning exercise or a business class, they say, if you have a vision and it's printed on like a laminated card and it's in people's wallets and nobody reads it or whatever, or it's on the wall somewhere that nobody reads, like that's ineffective. And usually those are top-down visions. The Michigan Promise, which Dr. Spain's talking about, which some of you may or may not know about, is a portfolio of faculty development and resident and faculty development initiatives. And there's 6 pillars. Kind of looks like a flower a little bit, but it came from the bottom up. So we started at a retreat maybe 8 years ago of how can we improve our department? How can we build it, make it better? How can we make it better for everyone? And we came up with there were eight initiatives. 6 of them ended up being funded by the department, and each one has faculty engagement. I think we had 58 out of 150 faculty involved in that process of building those programs, like a leadership program, launch teams, recruitment committees, enhancing our cultural environment. Those are the pillars. And so it was a highly ground-up engaged process. And then when I became chair, I printed it on my wall, and it sits on the wall there, right in front of my conference table. And every decision we make is grounded in those ideals. And so it definitely has the fact that our vision tells me that it was a success, and it wasn't my success. It's the success of the faculty in my department from the ground up, and that's why it works.
So you said it was already there. How do you keep it?
I was just talking to somebody yesterday. It's like when you take over a chair job like the University of Michigan, your number one job is not to screw it up. So that's my number one goal. And I think by staying true to those principles that the faculty wanted to put forth and have us be known for, we have a statement that says what we stand for, and it's those principles, and that's all put on once again on our website, which we cultivate our digital spaces carefully so people know who we are, what we stand for. And then if you show up there and visit, you'll hopefully find out that we have authenticity. Did you say fearless authenticity? Hopefully you'll find that we're authentic around those principles and those values. Because once again, if you have a brand and you can't live it every day in your local environment, then it's worthless.
Yeah, it seems to me it only takes one time, and then you if you show yourself not true to your brand once, it destroys all the work you put into it before.
On that note, I want to thank everyone. And
All right.
if everyone can come up, the panelists can come up. We have extra chairs here for the question and answer. And while that's happening,
I'm going to get down here.
our next audience question is, what did you learn today? If you can comment.
So let's move the chairs a little.
I'll just stand. We'll stand.
Big group. Yeah, we have a big group.
Come on, guys. What did you learn?
I'm actually going to be here because so we have a mic.
Stand.
So yeah, feel free to come up and ask a question.
So Dan Thurachelvan from Australia. Look, I'm sorry I came in a bit late, but I just wanted to ask you guys in terms of strategies to increase your Google rankings. There's a lot of companies that will sell you all sorts of stuff, which kind of seems like snake oil and a few other things. But how do you, improve that?
No, it's a real game, right? SEO, search engine optimization, and like there was some very simple things, like if you Google, something in the Bay Area, like Stanford was like, eighth down the list, and there's some very simple things you can do to move yourself up to number one on the search engine, so that you come up at top. There's a whole bunch of people out there that.
Well, and you can buy that. You can buy that as well. I mean, one of the questions, the last question was search optimization or marketing. My organization has purchased Google Words, Facebook ads, and all of that stuff. The individuals are identified when they click on that, and we can follow that information directly back to our clinic to see how many of those people signed on board. So.
I mean, I suppose more the question is there's a lot of people, like you can find hundreds and thousands of these companies, but what are they doing at the back end? How do you pick them, right? Because they're all promising you the same thing, right? They're all promising you to push you up.
How do you buy a new car? I mean.
Try it out and get some reviews.
Or find recommendations from others who've used them. I mean, we have digital marketers in our community who worked with our smaller private practices, and so you can potentially find someone else who's used a service and see if it seems like they're satisfied with it they received.
I'll just extrapolate from some of my life in the private industry. Classically in architecture, so as an example, if you say, hey, I want to build a brand new hospital, most firms will send their starchitect people to come interview. You hire them for the project, and then people you've never heard of are actually doing the work, who just started that company a few months later. So I think one way to sift through that is usually the person you interface with is a very smooth, polished, senior person, but then ask them, who am I actually going to talk to on the day-to-day? Are you my person I'm going to talk to every day? If they say yes, that's great. If not, I think asking to talk to the person who's going to be your day-to-day contact can usually help sift some of the quality control out.
First of all, thank you very much for such an enlightening discussion. I'm Sebastian, one of general surgery resident at Desert Regional in California. I just want to have a sense, what are the most common mistakes for recent graduates or young residents young physician surgeons when signing their first contract? And I know this question could vary a little bit between academics and community hospitals, but having this diverse panel, I wonder if you have any thoughts or examples.
I think I'm most recent in taking a first job, if I had to guess, from this panel. And I'll just pass on one pearl that I took on from my interview time. Is I was told to ask, when I'm on call at night and doing something at 2 a.m. and I got in trouble, who is the person that's going to come help me? And it was interesting. At some institutions, it was blank stares. And then at some institutions, they gave me a name. I said, could I talk to that person? I remember talking to this person. I said, hey, I'm really excited to meet you. I heard, like, if I get in a clinical jam, you're, like, my backup. And the person was like, you can call me, but I'm not coming in. I'm like, what? And they're like, well, I'll come in, but I'm not scrubbing in. I'm going to stand in the corner, and I might tell you what to do. And I was like, felt like very unsure that was, like, the practice I wanted to work into. And the practice I ended up joining, literally, like, 5 people in my group were arguing who was going to come in first. And sure enough, that turned out to be true. So I think literally asking some, like, hypotheticals about, like, who has my back when I get in trouble is super helpful.
So I thought of the answer Ali gave, where Ali is, about $10,000 or $15,000 difference in salary versus having people you want to work with. And I think you want to find a job where your partners are more committed to your success than you are. And I think that and that feeling of working in a good group or practice, I think is really important. When I was trying to find a job side about a job. Tom Russell, the former head of the college, said to go read the book Blink, and learning to trust your own intuitions about what seemed like a good job. And I think that the contract, the other things, you can get held up on those, but your partners who help you or your division chief who mentors you, those things are much, much more important than 10 or 15 or even $25,000.
So one thing I would encourage you to be careful about, especially for those of you who are looking for community jobs, if you are looking at a job where the person you're replacing was there for 2 years and the person they replaced was there for 2 years and so forth, that is probably not a great job. So that would be my first word of caution. On the contracting piece, I always look at it as similar to what Dr. Vessler said, which was you're working on building hopefully a long-term relationship in wherever you're going to take this job. And so you want to come to a contract that you would be happy with in either role, the new employee or the employer. Those types of contracts make for long-term good relationships. If you get a contract that is too good to be true for you, that means your employer may not be happy with it in 2 years, or they're going to be expecting you to work way harder than you want to. So that would be my advice.
So I think it was Dr. Bessler who said something about like make sure you have trust with the people, because fundamentally the contract's a piece of paper. These are relationships with other people. Like for example, I've heard a chair told me a story recently where they hired a new vascular surgeon who the contract said they were on Q4 call. They lost a partner and they had to go down to Q3, and that person refused. And so the senior partners were on Q2 because that junior partner refused to take Q4. And I was like, that was in your contract, good, but do you think that's going to be like a good working relationship with your
I know what I'd be
senior
doing.
partners?
I'd be like, your contract is ending
Yeah.
soon.
So like the contract is one thing, but the trust and how you behave with your partners is a much more important thing. But I'd say make sure you understand it to the extent that you know what your daily life will be like in that job and what the resources you need to be successful are. But then the trust of the people you're working with, I think, supersedes any contract, because contracts are a piece of paper that can frankly change at any time from either side.
So yeah, I would just go on. It's like a marriage with your partners. Your partners are like, it's like a marriage. It's like a band is a marriage, that sort of thing. So you really want to trust them and get along with them.
You also want to see the recruitment from the recruiter's perspective and put yourself in their shoes. What do you think they're looking for? And so most people are looking for people they can work with, teamwork, someone's not going to nag them all the time about nitty-gritty little minutia. And so if you start that negotiation with how many hours am I going to work and how much time off am I going to have and what's my salary, $20,000 up and down, that raises a red flag from the employer standpoint that this person is going to be just at my door every other day about a problem. And who wants that headache? Whereas if you are trying to understand their culture, even if you ask those kind of questions, there's a way to ask it that doesn't come across as a problem child versus someone who really wants to understand the culture and whether or not this fits with their expectations. So be wary of that and always pretend you're the one doing the hiring, and you'll probably get the questioning right.
I also think you have to be careful of being wanted, right? Like, yeah, this place is crappy and it'd be great if you just came here, right? Like you have to be careful of being wanted too much, because if you're like coming out of fellowship and you're going to be the linchpin that's going to make everything better, then there's a bigger problem with the place. So be careful of it.
Hello, I'm Ziad. I'm a surgical resident in England. I don't really know much about the US attending practices and so on, but in my country it's quite common for consultants, as we call them, to be employed and to remain employed in that hospital until they retire, usually for about 30 or so years. But speaking to some of the residents and attendings at this conference, it seems more common that American attendings change jobs throughout their career. is that the case, and why do you think that's the case? Thank you.
Well, I can say I've been at my job for 22 years. It's the first job I took, but I don't know if I'm the usual. But it's depends how you. No, again, it's the location and where you go. I mean, I love where I live. My wife loves where I live, and that's always important. And I really, the job is a good job, and it gives me the ability to pursue the things I want to do.
But I think you're observing this kind of willingness to be mobile and to move and not sit behind a consultant for 30 years until they retire. Is that what you're asking about for the U.S.?
No, I just meant that in England, it's very common for people to finish their surgical training and then to be employed as a substantive consultant from that job until they retire. Usually, yeah. It may be a case of a lot of the time when people are trying to employ new consultants, they want people who are fresh out of training rather than people who've finished residency or training a decade or two previously.
I trained in England. I was actually a registrar there before coming here. So I think your observation is absolutely correct. Why that happens, I'm less clear. I think opportunities for being a consultant in England used to be a lot less, right? There used to be a hierarchy. Also, once you landed somewhere, you took that job and you had income through that job, but you often supplemented that through your private practice, right? So once you then have an NHS job and you have a private practice job, to move it around is actually very hard, right? To build an NHS, to get a private practice takes a few years, so it's tough to move around. So opportunities are less, I feel, and then momentum for move is harder as well. American as a whole are just much more prone to move around, right? They go to college on one coast, live on another coast, have a vacation home in the middle somewhere. So, and opportunities are more, and there is more push for talent acquisition here than in the UK, I feel. So if you're good, people come and get you. So even if you may not want to move, people come and say, hey, Ali, we really want, actually no one says that to me, by the way, but they say, Justin, we really want you to move. We tried to recruit into Brigham. So we said, Justin, we really want you to move because people want talent, and there's that kind of competition is a little bit more evident here.
Can I comment on a community perspective? So most of the people here, even including myself, who I'm at a community hospital, are really in academic environments and not representative of the largest number of surgeons actually that practice in the United States. So surgeons who grow up somewhere, go to their state college, go to their state medical school, and get their first job where they live, they never leave. So I went away to medical school. I got my first job where I went to medical school, and I stayed there. And then once I felt like, I think I'm good enough to be independent no matter where I am, I found the best job that I thought at the time, which I don't have anymore, where I grew up. And it wasn't a great fit. I left that job after 18 months and moved next door, so I didn't have to move my personal life. And I can tell you, over the last 5 years, there is nothing my job could do to me to make me leave. Actually, nothing. I just want to be where my family is, because I have a really big family, and they all live in the Pacific Northwest. So understanding those things about yourself. And you know what happened when I came to that realization? All the things that drove me nuts at work, I was just like, whatever. I sure like living on the water. I sure like it that my nephew just came down for his wrestling tournament. You know what I mean? So this group of people isn't that group of people. So remember, when you're at academic meetings, you're talking to a lot of academic people.
I guess I would just say of my recent residents, the last 10 or 15 years, where's the guy who was talking? Oh, here it is. So probably at least half have moved within their first 5 years of their first job. And whether it was not a good fit or they got recruited out, but I think in my institution, a lot of the older surgeons have been there a long time. But now I think much more frequently people who take jobs, and if it doesn't work out, they're more happy to move.
I also think in academics to advance, moving sometimes is a shortcut. And I think if you talk to people who are in private practice, I mean, I can't. I can consider moving, but just to start all over, developing the new relationships with your referring doctors, it's a lot harder than going into an academic place that has a referral base for you already.
I mean, even in academics, you move. Yeah, you can. You can move up the ladder, but you go somewhere, no one knows you anymore. You have to build your practice from start too. I mean, that's a lot of work.
3 to 5 years for practice maturation.
Slightly tangential, but I know we talked about people not wanting to move. But I have to admit, I tell my faculty that I would expect them to look at a job every 2 or 3 years. Not because I want them to move, I hope they don't move, but I think by looking at jobs, you learn things about yourself, and you often learn about how you can do things better and different. So when faculty come to me and say, hey, I've been offered a job or I've been asked to look at a job, I'm like, fantastic news. Like, I think if I have faculty that every 3 to 5 years they haven't been asked to look at a job seriously, I wonder I don't have the right faculty in my division. I want people so good, everyone in the country wants them. And then the moment they say they're looking, I'm like, awesome, that's great. I don't want them to leave, and I will probably do stuff to keep them, but it is good to look, I think.
Any other questions? No, good.
Hello, Danny Moe from Emory University. Thanks so much for an excellent panel. I just had a question. This is such a distinguished group. We have global views of macro trends that's going on. One thing that we hear a lot about is the physician shortage that's going on. So surgeon shortage, et cetera, that they've been predicting this for years, hundreds to thousands of shortage in general surgeons and specialists. But on the job market, on the other side, more anecdotally, I don't really see that. I see a lot of people, I'm on 2 years worth of fellows in a group text, and people are really struggling to find jobs overall, not even just academic jobs in specific subspecialties, but just overall jobs. And I was just wondering if you had any opinions on why that may be.
So I think there's more a maldistribution than a shortage. I mean, you know, in Boston, I mean, everyone's very, very specialized. So I'm not just looking for a general surgeon, I'm looking for an endocrine surgeon or a pancreatic surgeon. So it may be unlikely, it may be hard to find a job in the city you want or in the subspecialty you have. We're interviewing an endocrine surgeon from town, and from Brigham actually, and there's like only 10 endocrine academic jobs in the country. So for certain subspecialties, it's really tight if you want to do that. But if you want to be a surgeon that has a broader route of broad general, with lots of opportunities, you know, I think that there are not many bariatric jobs, if I'm correct, right now. But I think if you're willing to move and be not in the city that you have your eyes set on, I think you can always find a job.
Yeah, I think in rural settings or critical access hospitals, there's a shortage. So you could find a location there, but where do people want to live? They want to live in the city, so that's where the maldistribution comes.
Thank you.
We're looking for a supplemental person to take general surgical at our hospital.
Any other questions? All right, guys, we just got 2 more questions for you. And then we'll end a little bit early. I appreciate everybody doing it. So do you have the question? I don't have it here. All right. So get your apps out. And the first question we're going to ask is, what did you learn today? Oh, you already did that one? Okay, sorry. So the last one is, did you do the last one? No. Okay, so in one word, how would you describe this session? Sucks. Oh, no.
We love immediate feedback.
Cordial. Oh, that's interesting. Well, good. I'm glad. It sounds like that. Yeah.
I'd like to thank the entire panel for their time
Yes,
and their
let's get-
commitment and their honest answers. We really appreciate it. And tell your friends this is going to be online, so hopefully people who missed it, they can benefit from it retrospective. I mean,
All right.
afterwards. Thank you very
Let's
much.
thank them.